All right, so the first major psychology thing is the scientific method. It's a system of gathering data so that bias and error in measurement are reduced. The most important thing is we're trying to decide if something causes another thing to occur. So, using the scientific method, we're trying to figure out a hypothesis. By eliminating bias, we can figure out, does this cause reaction or what? Now, when we use the scientific method, we perceive a question. So, for instance, do Plan students prefer vanilla or chocolate? What is your favorite type of ice cream? That'll be our example. So, the question is, do Plan high school students like chocolate or vanilla ice cream? So, we're going to form a hypothesis. If you had to guess, do Plan students like vanilla or chocolate ice cream most? What do you think?
Vanilla.
Wow, decisive. Okay. What do you really think? I would think people would go chocolate more, don't you think?
Yeah.
Who here, let's just do a rough little vote here. If you're chocolate over vanilla, who here? Okay, we're literally
What are you asking? Chocolate or vanilla?
ice cream. Do you prefer chocolate over vanilla?
Okay, sorry. Chocolate or vanilla.
It can't be equal. One's good, one's crap. Chocolate's better. Okay. All right. Well, clearly the ones with their hands up have good taste. I watched who didn't. Yes. Yes. See, definitive proof. Yes. All right. Fantastic. Which one do you work at? Oh, I've never been there. Is it good? If you so if you don't get to eat ice cream that much, would you go to your shop or would you go to like Cold Stone? Good call. Good call. Oh my God, I love Cold Stone. I get the same damn thing every time.
Yeah.
We are getting back on track.
Okay, there's sugar
No,
cookies.
no, no. Hypothesis. So we are going to make the hypothesis because Melan, damn it. Melan, I'm really trying. I'm so sorry. Melan says that chocolate is the most popular. So we're going to make the hypothesis that chocolate is the most popular type of ice cream here at Plant High School. So we form a hypothesis. Okay, then we test that hypothesis. So Miranda, when we say we believe Plant High School likes chocolate better, how would we test that hypothesis? Okay, can we make this a little more exciting instead of just be like chocolate or vanilla? What could we do instead?
Give out ice cream.
And everyone gets one type, right? Limit them, because if you offered me ice cream, I'd be like, oh my God, let me try both. Even though I really only want the chocolate, but I'm not going to turn down ice cream, right? Okay, so I'd be like, oh my God, let me try both. Okay, so we limit everyone to one, and then we could count how many people took the chocolate in comparison to the vanilla. There you go. So we test the hypothesis. Once we test the hypothesis, then we can draw a conclusion. So using our framework of everyone gets to choose one type of ice cream cup, how would we draw the conclusion for this experiment, Sydney? If everyone is going to grab one cup of either vanilla or chocolate, how would we draw the conclusion to our fake experiment? Okay, using my little frame of, we're going to have Plan students come up and select either a chocolate ice cream cup or a vanilla ice cream cup. How would we draw the conclusion? Simone?
Well, since more Plan students chose chocolate ice cream over vanilla ice cream when presented with the option outside the margin
You're
of
getting
error.
way too fancy, yes. We have more people chose chocolate. There you go. More people chose chocolate. We have way more. Absolutely. Perfect. However, we're going to keep it simple, stupid. More people chose the damn chocolate ice cream. So guess what we're going to say? Chocolate ice cream. That is our conclusion. Now, the most important thing when we talk about it, especially in AP Psych, is replication. Who can raise your hand and tell me what is replication? What is it? Desiree?
Do it again.
You can do it again. Do it again and get what? Same results. That's the key. It has to be the same results. So, if I decided today that I was going to do ask Plan High School kids if they want vanilla or chocolate ice cream, set it up, and we say chocolate is the overwhelming favorite, and then I do it again in June, and everyone votes for vanilla and overwhelming flavor. Is the experiment good, or is it a flawed experiment? It's a flawed experiment, okay? If it is a solid experiment, it will garner the same results with the same population to a degree. Okay? So, to be an official experiment, it has to be able to be replicated or to be done again and again and get the same results. Okay? Now, One of the other big things about replication here in AP Psych is that some experiments cannot be replicated. You're not allowed to do it. Why would you not be able to replicate certain experiments? What do you think, Kat? We're learning about 6 this year that if you replicate, you're going to go to jail.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, seriously. They're pretty awesome, though. They make it way more interesting.
There's an error in it.
Well, yeah, I could do an error on the accounting side of it. Do you think that's going to send me to jail? Why would someone go to jail for doing an
Child
experiment?
torture.
Hold on, that's a hand, and she has the time. What do you got?
Child for like violates the law.
Violates law. Yeah, that's a good reason why you go to jail. Absolutely. Ethically, they're wrong. We learned about 6 of them. We're going to learn one in 2 weeks. We're going to torture a child, and the child is never going to be able to recover, so you can't do that experiment. So I'm going to teach you how to do an experiment that you cannot go home and do to your little brother or sister. It is illegal. You will be arrested or brought charges against you. It's not a good thing. There's a couple of really famous ones you're not allowed to do, like the Stanford Prison Experiment, where people are literally abusing and taking advantage and doing terrible things to each other. You're not allowed to replicate that one. People almost kill other people. It's a crazy thing. So those experiments cannot be replicated because they don't want more people to be scarred from these experiments. Makes sense, correct? So replication is in 2 big ways you need to understand. Replication means you have to be able to reproduce the experiment and garner the same results, then it's a good experiment, correct? So if I invented a weight loss pill and everyone is losing weight in 100 different times I do the experiment, is the drug successful or unsuccessful? Successful. If I do a test, the first test, everyone loses weight. The second test, people gain weight. The third test, people lose weight. Since I got 2 out of 3, people lose weight. Is that a good test or a bad test? Bad. The drug does not work. You have to restart it. You have to go back. The FDA, in order to pass a drug, you have to go through 10 clinical trials, which means 10 different research facilities have to test the drug in the same exact experiment before it's federally approved. Okay? That makes sure that the results are predictable and expected. Okay? So, here we go. So, descriptive methods. Your first one is naturalistic observation. Now, naturalistic observation is watching animals or humans behave in their normal environment. So, if I wanted to watch high schoolers socialize, where should I go? Who can raise your hand and tell me? If I wanted to do an experiment and figure out how high schoolers socialize in 2016, where should I go to do naturalistic observation? What do you got, Deja? Lunchroom or cafeteria, absolutely. Now, Deja, if I wanted to watch do a naturalistic observation of how teens talk during lunch, should I, in a naturalistic observation, should I say, hey guys, my name's Miss Bennett. I'm just going to write down what you guys are saying. Just ignore me. Don't change anything. How's that going to go over? It would change absolutely everything, and hopefully your whole table leaves. Can you agree? That would be the creepiest thing ever. Yes? Okay? So, naturalistic observation is when you do not interfere. Okay? Essentially, if I wanted to do naturalistic observation of how plant high school students interact and socialize with one another, I would be the creeper in the corner of the cafeteria eavesdropping into conversations. That is naturalistic observation. I'm not interfering. I never address you directly, because if I address you directly, are you going to change your behavior?
Yes.
Absolutely. So, does anyone know who's the most famous famous person for doing naturalistic observations?
Steve Irwin.
No, Steve Irwin. He's more of an educator. That came up earlier today. He's more of an educator. No, Darwin's not.
Bear Grylls.
Huh?
Bear
Oh, I was thinking too.
No, the man, no. That man is straight up involved in just making things worse. The man is always on the brink of death before he recovers and somehow survives. Okay? Naturalistic, a perfect example is Jane Goodall. Does anyone know the name?
Oh,
Okay, Jane Goodall lived in the Kenyan jungle or some African jungle for 30 years. And she would wake up every morning, she'd put on her little khaki outfit, okay, and she would march up the mountain, and she would sit in a bush. In my head it's a bush, I don't really know. And then she sits there and watches the monkeys and writes down notes. Okay, she did it for 30 years. They have reached back. monkeys, gorillas, and stuff like that. I don't know. Okay? She literally sat in a bush, and by sitting there watching these monkeys interact, she never went up to the monkey and said, "Hi, I'm watching you today." She would sit far enough that they didn't know she was there, and then she would watch their behavior and take notes. That is a perfect naturalistic observation. Okay? Do we see the difference? You never pronounce yourself, you never interfere, you're just sitting back taking notes. Okay? Alright, perfect example, a real life example would be, you've all been in classes where your teachers have been observed. And the observer sits in the back of the class and is taking notes on the observation. That's a naturalistic observation to a degree. Okay?
They talk to us.
I know. There's no perfect examples. Jane Goodall is not a perfect example because the monkeys, because they got so used to her just hanging out in a bush, they invited her in to the group. She is part of the monkey group. I don't know. Yeah, there's so many photos of the monkeys like playing with her hair and like, cleaning her and stuff like that, and she plays with them and stuff like that. They've invited her in, and that is called participant observation, which we'll get to in a second. Now, naturalistic observation is a good thing because it gives you a realistic picture of behavior, correct? If I'm sitting down at your table at lunch, writing down all the things you're saying, are you going to carry the real conversation you want to have? Or are you going to have a fake, weird conversation? Weird one, absolutely. Disadvantages, the observer effect. Now, observer effect is when people are being watched and they know they're being watched, do you act the same way?
No.
If you're in the car with your mom and a bunch of your friends, are you going to have the real conversation you probably would have had if she wasn't there? Absolutely not. Would you be listening to the same music?
Yes.
Probably.
Really?
Yes.
Really interesting. Okay. With the observer effect is you change your behavior because you know you're being observed. The way you are in my class, is that how you behave outside my class? No. Deja's like, no, I am not. Yes, ma'am. No, observer bias is coming up here in a second. All right, participant observation is when you pretend to be a participant in order to get more insight. Have you ever seen Never Been Kissed? Oh my God. Thank you. You've seen it? It's a great movie. True, not true. It's with Drew Barrymore. It's from the 90s. Don't judge. Okay. I love this movie. I've seen it so many times. Drew Barrymore's character is a reporter for the Chicago Sun. That's how many times I've seen it. I can tell you the newspaper she works for. And she gets the assignment. She had a terrible high school career, high school life, and she gets the assignment to go back into high school to see how high schoolers are socializing and what they're doing in their free time. So she pretends to be a high schooler to the chagrin. She's a hot mess. Okay? But don't worry, she recovers. She becomes the most popular girl at school. She gets this super cute English teacher, which is so creepy on so many levels, but he's really cute. And they're both 30 years old, so it's okay. Anyway, so she goes back to high school in order to learn more about what it's like to be a high school student, and she writes it down. That's participant observation. Does that make sense? So you pretend to be something in order to learn more insight. Okay? I don't know if that's on there. I don't think it is. And then you have observer bias. So this is Jane Goodall hanging out with the monkeys. Okay? You can see that she's kind of a participant. Now, is she a full equal participant? No, but she's involved. She's not sitting in a bush. Yeah. It's like, what? Oh, sort of, yeah. Yeah, participant observation would be. Observer bias is a tendency of observers to see what they expect to see. So, if I am going to observe Plant High School students in their natural habitat of the Plant High School cafeteria, and I think all Plant High School students are super snobby, wealthy, rude people, when I'm sitting in the cafeteria, what am I going to be really listening to? Listening for? Snotty, rude things. Oh my God, when I was driving my mom's awful Bentley. Oh my God, this weekend was so hard. Like, we only had 3 maids. Can you believe it? How do people live this way?
Okay, true talk. I heard like some girl in like a brand new Mustang in the parking lot crying about how awful her life.
I know. Well, Mustangs aren't that nice.
They're pretty expensive.
My first car was
Brand
a station wagon. Yeah, looked like a little spaceship. Okay. My second car was way worse than my first car. Yeah, so pretty rough times. It was. I don't even know. I don't even think it had a name. Like, I don't think it was ever like produced in the United States. That's how bad it was.
Cuban car.
Might be. It had a sticker on the back that said "Save a Soul."
What?
And the trunk never opened. Could have been dead bodies. Could have been gold. I have no idea. We couldn't get it open. We tried everything. Couldn't get it open. It sold for $50. Drove that thing for 4 years. Yeah. Anyway, observer bias is hearing what I want to hear. So if I think all plant students are wealthy, rich, snotty kids, when I'm sitting in that cafeteria, what am I more likely to remember, recall, and write down? Plant high school students saying stupid, snotty, rich kid things, okay? And ignoring all the wonderful things you guys do in your free time. Oh, I'm doing this charity this weekend, I'm volunteering here, I'm doing this, all these wonderful, incredible things. I'm not really going to pay attention to it because I don't believe it. Simone.
Doesn't that go into like cognitive dissonance a little bit?
It does go into it to a degree, but cognitive dissonance is you're trying to trick yourself into believing something else.
Well, it's not this, like, because like what you see doesn't match up with what you believe, so you're kind of just disregarding everything.
It's a cleaner line with observer bias. When you walk into something with a thought ahead of time, that's observer bias. Cognitive dissonance is you've learned something different and you're trying to justify it. So it's a little bit different. All right, so blind observers are people who don't know what the question is, what they're focusing on. I don't think it's on your thing. And that's good enough for me. All right, laboratory observations. Okay, what is a laboratory? You can raise your hand. Tell me what's a laboratory. Oh my God, people. You don't know? Hunter. Where they perform experiments. And when you think of a laboratory, what color do you think the walls are? That's exactly what I think of. So, imagine I call you in to a room with all white walls into a steel table with the most uncomfortable chair, and there is a mirror in front of you. What do you immediately know about that damn mirror?
About to die.
Double-sided. So someone's standing on the other side, like, staring you down. Okay, while you're sitting in that room, are you going to behave normally?
No.
Are you going to be like, oh my God, this is like the most comfortable room I've ever been in. This is like so nice. Or are you going to be like, they're watching me. They're watching me. They know my secrets. Okay? Laboratory observation is when you bring people into a laboratory to test them or test a hypothesis on them. Okay? Now, laboratory observations are good for two major reasons. We just talked about one of the biggest disadvantages. What's a huge disadvantage to laboratory observations? We just covered it.
It's not natural.
It's not natural. Absolutely. No one goes into a white room, sits at a table with a double-sided mirror and like, oh, wow, this is like, I love the minimalist.
This is a Ritz.
This is so nice. No one thinks that way. It makes everyone uncomfortable. What are two good things that come from a laboratory observation? Simone.
They can control.
Control. An experimenter loves control, and we're going to talk about that a lot more tomorrow. Control means I can manipulate you in any way I want to. So say I wanted to do an experiment on does air conditioning have a positive or negative effect on learning? Now here at Plain High School in room 160, do I have real control over my air conditioning? No, I don't. However, mine's pretty damn good, so I will never complain. However, I don't really have that much control. So would this be a good place to test you? No, because will it be consistent? Will it be strong or influential at all? No. So in a laboratory, will I have more control over that? Hell yeah, I could turn down that air conditioning to like 65 degrees and really see, is your brain thinking faster or slower? I could do a memory test on you and see how well you do. Okay? In the retrospect, I could jack up the heat to about 90 degrees and see how well you think then. Okay? In a laboratory, I have much more control over those types of things. It'll be a much more effective way to test. In real life, is that an option? No. When you sit in a laboratory, are you going to be more focused on what you're doing there? Yes, because you're uncomfortable. Can we agree? In this classroom right now, are you kind of thinking, what are you going to have for dinner? Because I am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I think I'm having chicken on a salad. Okay? So, in real life, we have a lot of other things going on at the same time. You're thinking about what you have after school. You're thinking about, oh my God, we have 11 more minutes of this. I can't even deal. Okay? You're thinking of all these other things. In a laboratory, you're less likely to be thinking about all these other outside things. So, it's more consistent and much more reliable. Okay? So, we have advantages, control, specialized equipment. I can actually test the things I want to test. All right, so your next one is case studies. Kids, students always have issues with case studies. Now, case studies is looking at one person in great depth and then using that to create a hypothesis. Okay? Hold on, I will let you write this down in 2 seconds, but I need you to hear me. A case study is looking at one person getting their story, then using that story to ask a hypothesis. This is not an experiment, okay? So if I wanted to know what life is like at Plant High School for a teenager, I would look at Drew, right? Okay, good. I went confident with that. I'm glad it panned out. I would get Drew's backstory. I would follow Drew around, and I'd be writing down, oh, he's talking to her, he's talking to him, he's doing this, he's doing that. And I'd write, I wouldn't do that, I'd be the creepiest person. Okay? But I'd go around and I'd write down exactly what Drew is doing and who he's socializing, what he's talking about, and stuff like that. And I would write it down. Is Drew's experience the same experience that Lee is having? Are you having the same experience as him?
Probably not.
Probably not. I would say absolutely not. My experience is not the same experience. No one's experience here is the same. So we use a case study because after lofollowing him around for a while, we realize that Drew really is passionate about pizza. Loves it, lives it, breathes it, just writes blogs about it. All different types. He doesn't discriminate. His favorite is Hawaiian, quite like myself. It was a real bonding moment when we recovered that. Okay? So what happens is after following Drew around, learning that his whole social life revolves around pizza, can I assume that every high schooler at Plant's social life revolves around pizza? No. You cannot generalize in a case study. But seeing that Drew is focused on one thing, I can say, does every high schooler have one specific focal point of their lives? Is this true or not true? Then I can do an experiment from there. Does that make sense? So when we do a case study, we're focusing on one person to get a lot of information from, to then ask a broader question that we wouldn't have known to ask unless we spent the time researching one. Does that make sense? Okay, that is the point. Case studies are never taken. Oh, well, this is Drew's experience. It has to be the same for Dibs. It has to be the same for Sophia. It has to be the same for Carson. It's never like that. Case studies are used to ask more questions. One of the most famous case studies is actually done on prostitutes in Chicago.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it is actually one of the most interesting things, actually. It's a huge deal. Now, I think we can all agree our lives are not really like prostitute lives in Chicago. Can we agree? I hope your answer is yes. Because if your answer is like, actually, we have a lot of similarities, we should talk. So we can get you, other choices here. But some of the things this case study did point out is that the desperation humans have for human contact. Did you know that most prostitutes, although they're being paid for sex acts, most of the time they don't even commit sex acts? They're mostly getting paid for conversation and to have someone there with them. Now, would we have known that if we haven't had case studies about prostitutes and what goes on? So the research that spawns out of that is what amount of human connection do people need? And that spawns a whole other thing. So a case study based on a prostitute, we can all agree, is not really like, I can't relate to a prostitute. There's nothing about my life that relates to a prostitute. Okay? However, the thing that the prostitutes are dealing with is this human connection, and that connection spawned a bunch of really interesting research. It's sad, a lot of the research that came out of that one case study said that the average person needs a genuine connection to another human being for a minimum of 30 minutes a day. Would you agree? That you want to have a connection with someone, and it to be a genuine connection for only about 30 minutes. True or not true? Have you ever had days where you just haven't had a connection with anyone, like a genuine conversation? It's the most isolating thing. Just having a good conversation, even a short one, does not mean a lot. That is what we get from that. So yes, the case study is not actually what we care about. It's the questions it spawns. It's the research that comes out of it. And that is the key about case studies. Okay? So, the advantage is when we do case studies, we have a ton of detail. If I'm following Drew around for 3 weeks as he talks to me about pizza, okay, I'm going to have a lot of detail about what life is like for Drew and his obsession with pizza. I get a ton of detail, which is great. Disadvantage, it cannot apply. His life is nothing like your life, and your life is nothing like his life. That's the problem. But the great thing is it does foster conversation and a place to ask great questions. And I am done. It's about as much as I can do.